Hello, my name's Zoe Terakes. My pronouns are they, them, and I play Abbie in Ellie and Abbie. What inspired me to participate in this production was definitely the story and the size of the beating heart that is so evident in the film. I think it was such a labour of love. It's that special thing that happens with indie film where everyone is there solely because they love and care about this story deeply. I kind of knew that in my bones before we started because the story was so beautiful and simple and true. And yeah, I was right. The heart was the most evident thing through the whole shoot. In terms of challenges we faced, money, time, we had neither of those things. We had none of either of those things. But it didn't really feel challenging ever. I've been on sets where there's been, 40 million times more time and more money, and it's felt harder than the shoot of Ellie and Abbie felt. Everyone there was such a gem, and everybody's heart was just so in it, and people were kind of rising above any instinct to complain, and just tell a really beautiful story. It didn't feel challenging ever, really. But I'm also an actor, and so I didn't have to deal with as much of the challenge as people with more important jobs than me. So there probably was challenges I just didn't know about. I totally get everyone who believes that they shouldn't have to come out because het and cis people don't have to come out. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Why should we? I guess if you look at Ellie and Abbie, it's kind of captured in that, with Ellie kind of telling her mom to get real, it's not a big deal. I'm like, hey, it's absolutely not. But then also you look at Tara, Julia Billington's character, and then she kind of represents the other half of how I feel about it, which is that there's a great power in labels. And for me personally, labels have saved my life in a lot of ways. And I think for when you feel so at sea and when identity feels so vast and you can't comprehend it, having a word for what I am and a word that has existed for hundreds of years and that carries with it so much history and so much power and so much truth. I see the reverence in coming out and in labels because I see what it represents. And I think the film does a pretty bloody good job at capturing those two ideologies. And they're two ideologies that exist within me. And I don't really have an answer as to which one's right or wrong. I don't think there is a right or wrong. I just think it's really personal. I do think that it's something I think about a lot. There's representation that looks good and that will make a production company look good or make a show look good or make a director look good. And then there's creating authentic, safe spaces for diverse people in those environments. And they are two drastically different things. And this one happens a lot. This one is few and far between. And I think what people are slowly learning or beginning to understand, I hope, or what I hope maybe the next iteration of this is that when you have a diverse body in your show, you don't just get to have that. There is, there are things there's work you need to do to make sure that person is safe. Whether that means pronouns, just figure it out, learn how to do them, and hold people on your set accountable when they mess up, because people will mess up and that's totally fine, but make sure everybody is trying. Basic things like bathrooms, if an actor is a person of color, having a person of color in hair and makeup that knows how to work with them and their hair, and just basic things that I hope one day we don't even question to do. They're just done. But yeah, there is a drastic difference between using diversity as a means of clout for your own company and making sure those bodies are safe when they walk onto your set. Yeah, it's something I'm realizing lately. I think for so long I was like, yeah, here's my long list of advice. And I'm like, I have not a fucking clue what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? And things have happened accidentally and gone really well, and things have gone really wrong. And I'm just kind of making it up as I go along and looking to the people that I really respect and admire and love and trying to do what they do to the best of my ability. But I guess to aspiring creatives, be true. Just be true. I think there's a lot of pressure to hide things, and that's what success looked like, is tricking people into thinking that you are something that you're not. I think every time you're encouraged to hide something, do the opposite. Have boundaries within industry and keep what's personal and private to you, personal and private, if you believe it's personal and private. But when somebody else tells you something should be private and you don't believe it should be, and something in your gut is saying, this is who I am and this is an important part of my work and of who I am as a creative, do not shut that thing up. When you honor that thing in you and you go, I understand the risk of this decision. I understand the risk of me telling this truth may mean I don't get that job, or that person doesn't want to work with me, and doing it anyway, you are rewarded for that energetically. The right things find you. The more honest you are, the more honest your work will be, and the more honest the people are who find you will be. And even though you definitely feel the effects of telling the truth. I certainly have in my career. And you lose people along the way. I sure did. But the benefits of it means that jobs I couldn't have dreamt of doing before found me. And that's a pretty rare and special thing. And I know that those jobs and those people that I found and that found me were a direct result of me telling the truth. So I would just say, tell the truth. What I hope people get from it is a story of queer joy that is honest, and one that doesn't shy away from the tragedy of queer history or of the queer experience, but ultimately celebrates the joy of the queer experience, because there's a lot of joy, and a lot of tragedy, but a lot of joy. And I've said this a lot, but I think about when I was 14, 15, and I would go to watch, gay movies in my room alone. And it was like Brokeback Mountain, Blue as Warm as Colour, like just, movies where people died or were miserable. And I know a lot of scripts I get and a lot of, jobs I've done, trauma is at the forefront and is the main character trait of a trans or queer character. And trauma isn't a character trait. That's not a character. Hetero and cisgender characters get to be fully formed, and their cisness or heterosexuality does not make the character. They just are a character who happens to be cisgender and who happens to be heterosexual. And so often that is robbed of trans and queer characters. They are forced to be their identity. And in that, forced to lead with the tragedy of the history of their identity, if that makes sense. And therefore, we often don't get to tell nuanced stories or our own nuanced stories, because what is more interesting or trauma porn-y is tragedy and death and the really dark parts of our history that are, unfortunately, really important parts of our history, but they do not make the whole. And I feel really strongly about that. And I feel that when a trans kid turns on the TV and all there is murder and suicide and rape, what kind of a life does that kid get to believe they have? I want trans superheroes and trans people getting married on TV and big weddings, just joy. Because queer and trans people deserve joy. And this really feels like, and this is what it felt like when we were making it, a movie that a gay kid and their mum can watch together. I wish I had this movie when I was a teenager.